Thanks for coming and talking with me today about all things eating related. And maybe a good place for us to start is just with that. I understand that you've had some struggles with food.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have a food addiction, so I've been struggling with that pretty much my whole life.
Now, when you say a food addiction, what does that mean to you?
Well, I guess for a long time I didn't think I had one, and that's what they say, is that you're in denial for a long time, and then the first step is to admit that you have a problem. But food addiction, I guess, is what it looks like is every hour, every minute of my day I used to spend thinking about food. It was just all about food all the time.
And what kinds of things would you think?
I mean, when I was going to eat next, what was I going to eat next? I mean, it was just like constant thinking about food all the time.
And you say this goes way back for you.
Yeah.
And like how far back, or when you look back on it, when do you see it as first having started, and how did it develop?
I think like the root of it started when I was like young, like 7, 8 years old, but it didn't really get to be a problem until I was like 10 or 11 years old. When I was 8, my father started bringing in like rich foods to the house and like sugary foods, and I would find that I like those foods, so I would start, taking foods and bringing them to my room and hiding them and eating them in secret, and then I realized that wasn't a very normal thing to be doing, and then I would eat more food and in secret, and then it just became like a drug. Like I had to have it like all the time, and then once my father left the family, kind of went into like a depression kind of thing, and then I really started eating.
And so I'm hearing a connection between feelings and eating in some way for you.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And so tell me about that.
It's been long suspected that I've been an emotional eater. Like, I used to eat for comfort, and I still do sometimes, but there are also times when I'll not eat when I'm upset. And now it's just, it's become so commonplace in my life that I'll just eat because I'm bored.
I see.
But I guess that's an emotion too. Yeah.
Okay. And have you tried to do anything about this sort of compulsive eating, or what role is it playing in your life now, and what have you tried to do in relation to it?
Well, I mean, I have done things. I've gone to Food Addicts Anonymous, and which is different from OA, Overeaters Anonymous, and which is only different apparently. It's just they're both 12-step programs, but their diets are different and their philosophies are different. From what I'm told, I've never been to an OA meeting, but I went to those for a while, and I was the youngest person there, and it was nice to have the camaraderie and talking to people who knew it was happening, but for the most part it was just not doing it for me, and I didn't really feel like I was connecting with anybody. And then I've tried dieting a million times, like everybody's tried dieting, and yo-yo dieting. I've done that for years. I'll just lose weight and gain it back, and lose weight and gain it back, and then I'll try changing my eating habits, go right back to where I began, and it's just over and over. But now it's been 6 months now, and I've kind of gotten a control on it, and I'm kind of being optimistic about it. I'm working with a therapist and a psychiatrist, and I'm losing weight. I've lost 50 pounds, and I've gotten my eating under some sort of control, and I'm not thinking about food constantly, which is like, for the first time in my life, it's like awesome. But at the same time, I'm thinking about other things now, which is not so awesome.
I see. Okay. And so what are you thinking about now that's replacing the food?
Problems like the relationship I just got out of like a year ago and things like that. And then like, how am I going to pay my bills and other things like that.
So it's stuff that you weren't thinking about when you were thinking about food all the time, because those thoughts crowded out all the problems.
Yeah.
And maybe that was part of the function of the food, to always keep other stuff at bay.
Yeah, and another thing about food addiction is it's just like a drug addiction, is that all your money goes first to food and then everything else next. It's like with a drug addict, like first to drugs, then everything else.
So it takes your time, it takes your money, it affects your relationships?
Yeah.
And how does that work? How does it affect relationships?
I know that my mother and brother are very concerned, and they voice that often, and they will cry. I hear them crying sometimes about that because I have sleep apnea and it's not being treated currently, and they're not sure if I'll wake up or not. And then I know that in my past relationship, the 10-year relationship I just got out of, my ex used food as a way to control me because she knew that I was so addicted to it.
So what would she do with food to control you?
She would sabotage, because she knew that I was trying to lose weight and stuff, and she would sabotage my efforts. She would like feed me food, and then she would also like she would offer to buy me food, and then later she would guilt trip me into saying that that I spent her money like all the time and stuff like that.
So she would use food to control you in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And keep you down and keep you sort of under her.
Yeah, and it was all circles. Just like food in my life is just it's hard being addicted to something you need to survive, because you can't just quit.
You can't not eat.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to control the thing that otherwise could control you.
Yeah, and that's the line I'm trying to, balance right now, because there are times where I won't eat, and there are times where it's a struggle to eat, and that's been pretty recent. But I think that's also part of the food addiction, and that's also that's me trying to break the food addiction, but it's not a healthy way of doing it.
Not eating?
Yeah.
So tell me what that's like. You said that for a long time you just had, you're just thinking about food every waking moment and every sleeping moment. It was just on your mind, what you're going to eat, how you're going to get it, how you're going to prepare it, and then a kind of pull or an urge to eat, or what is? Describe the struggle to me.
Like, say if I were going to a function like later in the day, like I would be planning like every little thing I was gonna eat there, or like everything was centered around what I was gonna eat like in a day. It was never around like anything else. It was very annoying, and I didn't realize like that was a problem or that was a pattern until very recently.
So food is like the center of your life, and everything else revolves around that.
Yeah.
And then is that, give me a sense, is that a love relationship with food, or is that a love-hate relationship with food?
It's a love-hate, I think, because I like the way it makes me feel for like 1 second. It's kind of like a shot of morphine where it makes you feel good for like a minute, and then afterwards you're like, you hurt again. So,
And what is the hurt?
your feelings, just the way you feel, because it's just. I told my friend the other day, I just am like an emotional torture, like 24/7, or I feel like I am, and just the food kind of makes me feel better for a little bit.
So it's almost like taking an aspirin for a chronic headache or something.
Pretty
It helps
much.
a little bit for a time, and then it wears off, and when it does, the pain is back again.
Yeah, especially because I also suffer from binge eating disorder, which was another thing entirely. And that was also another whole aspect of the addiction.
And so when you say binge eating and say that that's a whole separate thing from the food addiction per se, help me understand that. What does binge eating mean to you? What would be an example of a binge?
Well, binge eating is where I would eat like so much food to the point where I would be like sick, and no real reason other than I was either punishing myself or I wanted to. And I haven't binged in a while, but when I do binge, my body just is nowadays just can't do it anymore, because I haven't done it in such a long time. And when I do it, my body just gets so sick. But I used to eat a horrendous amount of food.
So what would be an example of sitting down for a single setting? You're doing the binge by yourself?
Yeah.
And so give me an example of what you might consume in a binge.
I would eat like a box, like a whole box of donuts, like 12 donuts, and then like whole cartons of things, like cookies and sweet things mostly. And but usually whole cartons of things.
Like a whole carton of cookies?
Yeah.
And a whole, like dozen donuts? And anything else in a typical binge?
Mostly, like I said, mostly sweet things, but it could also be like sandwiches. It could also be bread. I like a lot of carbs stuff.
Like a couple slices of bread, or more
no,
like a
loaf.
A loaf of bread.
Yep, I would eat like a ton of food. Like it would be a mass amount of food, and I would eat like Nutella. I would eat just like the whole jar of Nutella, and a whole jar in a binge. And I would say, if I was guessing, maybe around 5,000, 6,000 calories in a binge.
In a single sitting?
Yeah.
Over a period of how long?
Maybe an hour.
I see. So you're taking a lot in a pretty short period of time.
Yeah.
And are other people aware of this?
No.
No, you're doing it secretly. And where are you doing it? And,
Usually my room.
and is there a preparation for that? Do you kind of bring everything in and hoard it, and then?
Yeah, pretty much. Sometimes I'll either go to the grocery store and buy everything at one time and like bring it home and just binge then, or I'll hoard stuff like little pieces at a time and then binge like a couple days later or something like that. But
So sometimes it's impulsive, and sometimes you're actually sort of planning it and premeditating it,
yeah.
collecting it, and then when the time is right, you
Yeah.
do the binge.
But it's usually the former, so
I see.
yeah.
And it sounds like that one you've got more under wraps now, more under control. You're not doing it as much,
Yeah.
in part because your body won't take it anymore.
My body is just done with that, and yeah, my stomach has shrunk, and my stomach is just done. So yeah.
And so I understand that you've done a number of things to try to address these eating challenges, and it sounds like you've been in therapy, and you've done the food addiction 12-step program, and found elements of that were good, but not the kind of connection that you really wanted or feel like you really need for it. What else have you tried, or what else is?
Well, I've also reached out to my friends and family, which was recent. I did not. I'm not very close to my like relatives, I guess, like outside of my mother and brother, because I don't really have a huge family. So, well, I do, but I don't really get along with them. So I didn't really want to like tell everybody, because once you tell somebody anything in my family, like travels through, it's like playing telephone, and then it gets mixed up and things get screwed up and through telling other people. So I don't, but when I told I told them in August, so last month, I told them about having a food addiction, and I told them about my struggles in life with my whole eating thing and stuff, and the binge eating, and they were very supportive, and especially, and even people I didn't expect to be supportive were supportive. So it was surprising and very uplifting, so I liked it.
That's great. Well, let's turn and talk a bit about the family then, because it seems like it's been a surprising resource for you in some ways. And on the one hand, it sounds like you can trace back all the way back to when you were sort of 7 or 8, your dad bringing this rich food in, and you sort of secreting that away, and that maybe being the beginning of your sort of addiction to food.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, people have played a supportive role moving forward as well.
Yeah.
So how did your dad ever come to know his role in the food addiction and struggles that you had?
No, he never did, because I didn't admit I had a food addiction while he was alive. And my mother kept saying to me I had a food addiction, and I was like one of those bratty teenagers and young adults. So I was like, I don't have a food addiction. I don't know what you're talking about. And I had a lot of unresolved problems with my father, and up until the day he died, we had unresolved problems. So no, I never told him, and I'm sure he will know, he knows, and he's watching me or whatever. But no, he doesn't know, and he might have known, or he might have had an inkling of, but I don't know if he cared. So.
But it's not something that your mom was kind of in on it, and she was aware and knew.
Yeah.
But your dad was not in on it, and it sounds like you didn't necessarily want to bring him into that.
No, because I was mad at him. So.
I see.
So yeah, I mean, he left. He was like so in and out of my life that I was just like, you know what? I'm not gonna include you in anything.
I see.
So, my mom, raised me. My mom took care of me. My mom was close to me, and my mom knows what has been going on in my life, so she, of course, picked up on it.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Even though you wouldn't listen to her,
Yeah.
you recognize that she was in there and
Yeah.
had your best interest at heart.
Yeah. I finally looked at myself and I was like, maybe I am a food addict. Maybe I should go to one of these meetings. So I went. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how about your brother? What role has he played across time in your struggles with food?
The food police.
The food police?
Yes.
Your brother is part of a member of the food Gestapo?
Yes.
How does that play out? What does that mean?
Ever since he was young, ever since he could speak sentences, he has tried to control inadvertently and actively what I have eaten. He says he will say things to me, like if I'm like eating something like at a time of the day, like if it's late, he'll say, you know, maybe you shouldn't be eating that right now. Or if I'm eating too much or something, he'll make a comment. Or I used to get angry about it, and sometimes I still do. It's offensive.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's part of the whole addiction thing as well, because you don't like to be corrected.
Mm-hmm.
But
So I almost get the image of him, you know how you have the little devil and angel on your shoulder?
Yeah.
I almost get the image of him as the little agent provocateur devil over here.
Yeah.
Don't eat that, don't eat that.
Yeah, the little angel. Yeah, he's like that. He's always been like that. But he's worried about me. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Does it feel to you as if he's on your side or on your case?
both.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
He always tells me, like, whenever I'm losing weight and stuff, he's proud of me. But he's one of those people where he's very absorbed in himself, and he doesn't show. He's not one of those people where he like congratulates people a lot of the time, or stuff like that. So you really have to like drag things out of him, unless he's being critical of you.
I see. Okay. So the critical comes naturally.
Yeah. I always tell people it's like living with Simon Cowell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And for your mom, you see her as
She's my like rock and my support, and she's the most she's the best woman in the world, and I love her so much. And she tells me things. She tells me she's not sugarcoating it. And it doesn't, really help that she's a fitness trainer and a physical therapist, and she's going to tell me that, hey, if you don't do this, further down the line, that it's going to end up, you're going to end up like looking like this, or things are going to end up like this, and so I've kind of taken that into consideration.
So you can see that she may be right.
Yeah.
But the sense is that she's saying this out of concern for you.
Yeah.
She's not saying it to be mean or critical.
Right.
And I understand that part of what has motivated you to address the problems with eating is that you can see both in your brother and in your mom real concern for your welfare.
Yes.
Like if things continue, you may not be around.
Yeah, and I don't want to leave them, so we've already lost some, like my father, and we don't want to lose. I don't want them to lose, me, because I know that if my mother lost me, that she would just give up. I mean, she wouldn't give up because she has my brother, but she would just. She'd be a mess.
It'd be a devastating blow, right?
Yeah, so I just can't do that.
Now, you mentioned that you came out just recently to your family, to your broader family,
Yeah.
and told them about your food addiction. and you got a surprisingly affirming kind of response.
Yeah.
What triggered you doing that after all these years, and what did they say and how'd they react?
Well, it was because I had lost 15 pounds in a month, and I wanted to tell them that how hard this was for me, and how hard this whole changing my whole lifestyle is doing this. And I just posted this whole long thing on Facebook, and I told everybody, I told my family and friends, everybody that knows me on Facebook. And I got like my cousin, my second cousin, she's my father. This is all my father's side of the family, so it's like my father's cousins and my great aunts and stuff like that. Like they're all very supportive of it, and it's very, I was like ready for them not to be, because they're not very supportive people. So it was nice.
Well, that is nice. That's very encouraging, because you were talking about, like in the treatment, you were looking for connections, and that's part of what you wanted.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they gave you some affirmation and some connection. They're on your side.
Yes.
And proud of you for your weight loss, and for your efforts, and for just taking on the struggle.
Well, yeah, that's what I want, you know. I don't need like affirmation or anything, but I would like, you know, someone to be there to, you know, listen, and if I'm struggling or something. And that my family and friends are the best people for that. So.
And it sounds like maybe even better than your relationship of 10 years.
Yeah, I don't talk to her anymore. So.
I see. But even when you were together, it sounds like that was not a major source of support for you.
Not at all, no.
More a source of...
It was very bad.
A bad relationship?
Yeah.
In what way?
It was abusive.
Abusive?
Yeah. And mentally, physically, emotionally. She was a narcissist, and she played... The whole 10 years was a whole big ego trip for her, and a whole big... I was a way of... She was just controlling me the whole time. It was just... Yeah. It was damaging to me. So,
so you've shed that at least.
Yeah.
In favor of relationships that are a little bit more positive and constructive. Let me ask you just, we've covered so much territory, and you know, I appreciate your honesty and your candor in talking about these things. These issues for you go way back to being a little girl. And if you were, you know, watching our conversation and you were in a position of wondering and worrying about whether you had a food addiction, what could you say to that person or those people that would be helpful? Knowing now what you know now, is there anything you could say that would be useful or constructive to them to hear, that it's kind of like, you know, I wish I knew then what I know now, or I wish I'd taken to heart something then that has been a hard-fought lesson for me now? Anything you can say that would be a helpful thought or comment or insight?
Well, don't be afraid to tell somebody, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because it's more common than you think. And I know it might be embarrassing, or you know, you might think it's embarrassing, but it's not embarrassing to have an addiction. And it's definitely not embarrassing to ask for help. So.
Excellent. Well, and I think your comments and your candor and your courage represent a form of that help. So I appreciate you taking the time and talking with me about the struggles you've had around eating.
Oh, thank you.